All right, we're live streaming. I'm going to open up the webinar and folks will join us and then I'll queue up the video. Have a great session, everyone.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Job Week and this awesome session about succeeding as a content creator. I'm Danny, the VP of Community, which means I get to spend most of my time working with Skillshare's awesome creators. And if not working with them directly, I'm thinking about them. I am so excited for the session. But before we kick off, I just wanted to acknowledge the job market out there is tough. Really talented folks I know are struggling to find a job, never mind a dream job like the ones our panelists have. For anyone in that boat, I'm hoping this session is both a reprieve from the grind of the hunt and a way to get some tools, perspective, and energy that will propel you forward. In fact, I hope that's true for everyone. I hope this is a really inspirational moment for you that you can look back on and get really excited by. All right, so we have a bit of a rock star panel for you today. We have Danny Lowney, the founder of legendary London-based talent management agency 16th. So named because the agency believes in getting creators past their 50 minutes of fame into their 16th minute and beyond. We have Taz Allam, also known as Click for Taz, a veteran creator with nearly 10 years of experience and 1.5 million followers. She's known for funny, uplifting, and insightful content. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out her YouTube yet, I totally would. It's a lot of fun. And last but not least, we have Avi Gandhi, who has 15 years of industry experience. And he's done cool things like pioneered the creator representation at William Morris Endeavors and led the creator partnerships team at Patreon, to list just a few. He's also a creator himself and the founder of the Creator Logic newsletter, which I, as someone in the creator economy, find super helpful on a regular basis. So one last little bit of housekeeping here. If you want to participate in the group chat, just know that if you just send without changing the settings, it's just going to send to the host and panelists. So please just switch that to everyone so you can participate in the chat. And I know you want to because this is a fun group. All right, today we are going to cover how to identify and deliver value to your audience, how to monetize as a content creator, how to grow as a creator. Then we're gonna have some fun audience Q&A. Just a note for the Q&A, ask your stuff anywhere in the chat or the Q&A box throughout. They're gonna be collected. We only have 10 minutes at the end to answer all the kind of questions. So we won't be able to get to everything, but we'll try to get to as many as possible. Alrighty, to get into it, let's kick off with delivering and identifying value to your audience. Okay, so we have 3 panelists here, and we're lucky to have 4 unique views. We have the veteran creator in the form of Taz, we have the talent agency view in the form of Danny, and we have the industry view and the kind of like newish creator view in the form of Avi. And by newish, I mean creator for the last 2 years. So I want to start with that creator view, though, the veteran creator view. Which I think is important because the creator economy of 10 years ago is significantly different than the creator economy of today. So Taz, this first one's for you. As a creator, how did you identify the value you wanted to bring to your audience? In those early days, was it a highly intentional process or something you came to by way of understanding your passions and interests?
I think it happened in the moment. So my channel and the content I make has changed a lot since I first started. The thing that initially grew my channel was spoken word poetry. And the only reason that happened was because I was going through a tough time in my personal life, and I just found this passion for poetry and I just put them online, not thinking anyone would watch it. But it did grow an audience to like 200,000. And that was very passion led. That was very vulnerable, authentic content that I didn't think people would watch, but a lot of people did. And then I slowly started growing into the kind of content I make today, which is very much like vlogs, lifestyle. And it's just basically me just figuring life out, but on camera for the world to see. So it was very natural, it was very organic, it was very authentic because it was just creating what felt right to me in that moment. But a lovely byproduct of that was that yeah, it was very purpose driven, but it came from a very authentic place. And now looking back, I can see like the value it brings to people and why people connected the way it did. But it wasn't something strategic. It wasn't something I intentionally planned. It was very much my life was happening and I was capturing it. But I think my personality as a person, I am very purpose driven. So I think that just naturally happened because that's just how I live my life. And I do that through storytelling and people connected with that. But yeah, 10 years ago, I don't think people were as strategic as you are now. So yeah, it was very much just me living my life on camera. But looking back, I can see there was a lot of value and purpose in the content.
You muted, Danny.
Darn, that was a
Classic.
yeah. Taz, do you think your approach has changed at all? Have you become more strategic, or do you still feel like you're staying true to that?
I think now it's a job. So I would be lying if there was like no strategy whatsoever. There definitely is. I'm much more aware of that. I'm much more aware of having an audience. Back then it was growing an audience, so you were still trying to find your feet. Now I would say I definitely have a much more strategic business aspect to the content I make. But I'd like to think it's still me, like the passion is still there and it is still, you're watching the same person I was a few years ago, but I've just grown in a much more business kind of way. But I think that's just part of growing up as well. But I think hopefully when you see my content, it still feels like Taz just living a life, you know?
As someone who watched some recently, it definitely feels that way. All right. Danny, I'm curious about your perspective because 16th is rooted in representing creators who deliver genuine value to their audience. So how do you identify when a creator is doing that and what are you looking for?
Yeah, I think there's like a founding answer and then there's like a today answer. What I mean is that the kind of origin answer is why did they start creating content in the first place and why do they continue to hit upload today? And to Taz's point, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that was usually a very kind of pure expressive why. I just felt like it. I don't know, I just wanted to share this thing, or I just had this like strong feeling. And it's been interesting. 16th has been around for about 7 or 8 years, and in that time, kind of hearing people's why changing, to often being much more commercial now, which I think by itself certainly isn't a bad thing at all. But it is an interesting thing for us to listen out for, because if there is only a commercial purpose in the absence of anything deeper, anything more compelling on a personal level, I think that can be a tough thing to contend with or to build like a long-term business with. In terms of like it, so that's like the kind of origin founding answer. And I think like the more day-to-day answer is that I do believe content ought to have grounding in some purpose, because it really, it's like creators they trade off attention, and they trade off relationship, really is the better word, because and the extent to which you're putting out something that is meaningful and purposeful and actually benefiting your audience, I think increases the extent to which you build a relationship with them, build rapport, build a sense of reciprocity. The more I'm giving my audience, the more kind of I'm building up in terms of this, like their desire to give something back, whether that's a like or a view or a purchase of a product or a click of a link. And so I think there's a business reason, like in today, there's a business reason to be adding value and to be having like a very purposeful approach to doing content. So, but that's how we look out for it, understanding why they started, why they continue to upload, and then what drives them today as well.
Is it fair to say like the business approach without the heart in it doesn't really create that kind of like long-term value?
I think time will tell. My answer would be yes. I could definitely debate that though, and I could see good counter arguments. But yeah, it's only a relatively young industry still. But I would argue, yeah, it needs to have some heart.
Can I go off script and jump in here a little bit?
Please.
So we're talking about how the industry has changed over the last 10 years. So the old man in the group has to say something about that. So 10, 15 years ago, to your point, Danny, and yours, Taz, like the creators were artists, right? Like they were making content because they felt like it. They were expressing themselves. Many of them wanted to be in film and TV, but had no way to get past those gatekeepers. And so this was a way for them to like create without needing someone, an agent or a manager or a studio exec to allow them to. And also a lot of them thought of it as a way to like actually break into that side of the business. Fast forward to today, and creators are now more of a spectrum, right? So like there's artists on one side, entrepreneurs on the other side, right? Artists are still making content regardless of who watches it. They're making it for themselves. If nobody watches it, they're going to keep making it. Entrepreneurs are making content because it makes money. And if it stopped making money, they'd stop making content. There are very successful creators who are purely entrepreneurs. I would argue that if Gary Vaynerchuk stopped making money from content, he'd stop making content tomorrow. He does not care about making content. He cares about making money, right? And so I think it depends on the creator and the creator's goals ultimately. And you can find success on either side. So I wouldn't necessarily tell someone, well, you're not like deeply passionate about the content you're creating. Maybe you're deeply passionate about the product that you're selling, and content is just the vehicle to sell that product. Great. Like at the end of the day, you got to market somehow. People got to find out about your product somehow, whatever it is you're selling. You should be passionate about what you do generally, or at least somewhat interested. Otherwise, just get a job, because it's going to be way easier than this.
Where do you think you fit as a creator in your approach?
Well, you started this up by talking about the hard job market. I was also laid off a couple of years ago, and so it was my second time actually, and so I was kind of disillusioned and tired of the notion of employment, because I think the like social contract around that has largely been broken, or at least the veil has been pulled back, right? I could spend the whole panel talking about this, but I'll move on from that. And so I wanted to take more control of my life and business. Ironically, I would say that like it's not actually that much more control, because you're still kind of blown in the winds of the market a little bit, but nobody's telling me what to do, right? And so I would say that I'm definitely on the more on the entrepreneurial side, but I started out like I started growing an audience on LinkedIn sort of by accident. Like I'm interested in the business, was sharing my insights as like a personal brand building exercise while employed. Um, and started to get a following and then saw that turn into leads for my consulting and eventually brand deals and that kind of thing. And so in the spectrum I probably skew more entrepreneurial, but I'm not all the way, right? I would still write for fun, and I have since 2016, right? I used to write about politics on Facebook for funsies and kind of built a little following there, and then realized that was terrible for my mental health and abandoned that. But yeah.
I was going to say it's a strange definition of fun.
Well, fun is maybe the wrong word. Passion was probably the right word. But it's certainly not fun.
On this point though, because Taz mentioned this, that like we naturally evolve and our interests change. And I think we're talking about like fun and passion as completely divorced of like business entrepreneurship. Like the two things can also, like, business can be fun. People find entrepreneurship fun. And so I think that perhaps it's also not completely divorced of one another.
Yes, it's not binary, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, Actually, Avi, this might be a good time. You do have a framework around trust, scale, and quality, right? And like, I think maybe that'd be a good time to kind of bring this up. I know we have a slide. Um, Here we go.
I love
Hmm.
this. Okay, so when you're thinking about, we're talking, the theme of this panel is like going from 1,000 to six figures. Um, there's two ways to make more money, right? It's a general economics frameworks, revenue equals price times quantity, right? And so you can either increase the quantity of whatever you're selling. So if you're selling brand deals, you get more brand deals. If you're selling consulting, you get more clients. If you're selling courses, you sell more, or classes, you sell more classes, whatever it is. Or you increase the price, right? You charge more for the brand deals that you're going to be doing. You charge more for the classes that you're selling. You charge more for your consulting services. And generally, as a creator, I think I've observed that there's three ways to either sell more or charge more, and sort of depends on what you're trying to do. But those three ways are to be, you know, credible, to have higher quality, or to have higher reach. Right now, reach is the obvious one. Generally speaking, it's the one that everyone tries to go for. It's and there's a reason Mr. Beast is the picture here, right? He's got the most reach, um, and and that works because if you have like if you grow your reach, then you either going to sell more or you're going to be able to charge more, right? You're going to charge more for your brand deals. You're going to sell more stuff because if you're converting 1% of your viewers, you get more viewers. That number that's converted goes up, right? Obvious. But quality and trust are less obvious, but equally, well, I would argue equally valuable, right? There are people who don't have enormous audiences, but are incredibly credible in their field. Neil deGrasse Tyson, great example of that, used to represent him. Very credible guy, charges a lot of money. His like social following has grown over the years, but he was, getting paid seven figures 10 years ago when he had maybe a couple 100,000 followers across social. Um, and the reason for that is like he's a real astrophysicist, the head of the Hayden Planetarium. Like he is the new Carl Sagan, as they used to call him. Like super credible in his field, right? For the same reason that you have all these kind of thought leaders in business and in psychology and in professors from Stanford and Harvard and blah 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 that are making tons of money and speaking gigs and partnering with brands and consulting. It's because they're so credible. Their trust is so high, right? This is the reason that I'm able to charge what I charge for consulting, and the reason that, despite having 20,000 followers on LinkedIn and 10,000 email subscribers, I make multiple six figures a year. It's because like I've been doing what I do for 15 years. I'm one of the few people in the world that has the industry experience in this space, right? I've been an agent, a manager, a producer, an executive. And so I have that trust. I don't have reach, but I have that trust. Quality, I think, is the last one. It's the hardest one, right? But like, there's a reason Christopher Nolan gets paid 10 million, for a movie, even though he has zero social following, not even on social media, right? Because that Christopher Nolan is going to make an incredible product, right? That's rare. That's very hard. Hollywood is built entirely on quality because Hollywood pays for reach, right? Um, it's tougher to accomplish in social media, but like it happens, right? There are tons of creators. I wouldn't say tons. There are creators who make amazing videos, amazing, write amazing newsletter pieces. And they gain a following and they get paid great money from brands, or they get, people pay huge amounts of money to work with them because they make such good product. Maybe they don't have the huge reach. Maybe they're actually nobodies, but somebody found their video and said, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible. I want to hire this person to produce my whatever commercial." And so I think trust, quality, reach are kind of the three variables that you as a creator have some level of control over. I'm not saying they're easy. Any of them are easy, right? But like you can decide which one you're going to try to attack as a lever. And if you're trying to get to six figures, picking one of these and running with it is probably the way to do it.
All right, this is a great segue into the next section, which is about monetizing your audience. But before we get into that, any hot takes from Taz or Danny?
On monetizing your audience or on Abby's point?
On Abby's.
I thought it was really.
I'm sorry.
As in, like, I agree with what Abby was saying. Sometimes you can get lucky and have like all three if you're really good. But I think that's so true. And I think sometimes the trust one is huge. I think that's probably what YouTube is well known for, because it's like meant to be, especially when we talk about 10 years ago, the pureness of creating. It was so pure. It was so everyday people, real. I think that relationship has changed over the years and how people view influencers. We weren't called influencers back then. We were just creators, and the definition and vocabulary has changed so much over the years. But initially, what was YouTube? It was just everyday people talking to their webcam to other people, and it was solely built on trust. So yeah, I think that is one that maybe we're learning more about, but I think in the traditional advertising world, that wasn't like a thing before, right? Now influencer marketing is like part of the budget that didn't exist 10 years ago because of that trust element. So I think that's really important to mention.
Yeah, and I also think, like, for better or for worse, they're also linked. So like reach, as you start growing an audience, that also builds trust, and whether that trust is like placed in the right way or not is questionable, but it's true. You can't really argue with that. And then the other thing I liked Abby's points about like which of those are controllable and not. And I think with trust, like we can't all become like world-renowned physics experts, but also there are more human ways of building trust, like giving more of yourself, like if it's like a lifestyle vlog or something like that, like being transparent, being open with people is a way of also winning trust without necessarily having to get a doctorate or a PhD. But yeah, I really like that framework. It's really, really helpful.
Well, let me add on to that though. So the first thing I want to say is like you're totally right, Dan. They're all linked. It's almost a flywheel, right? Like if you have trust, odds are you'll be able to grow an audience. If you make amazing content, you're probably going to grow an audience. And likewise, by making lots of content, which you probably will continue to do if you have reach, then your content gets better and you build trust, blah, 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 right? The thing about trust and the thing about like being an expert and sort of previewing like a paper I'm writing right now with I'm advising a venture capital fund, Point 72, is that expertise actually, it's objective, but it's also subjective. What I mean by that is like Neil deGrasse Tyson is a physics expert for everyone because he is at the very top of his field. But for me, a PhD physics student is a physics expert.
Mm.
To be honest, for me, like a undergrad studying physics is a physics expert relative to me, because like I don't know anything about physics. I took high school physics, and so expertise really, especially in the age of like infinite information and the creator economy, expertise can simply be who is the person one level up from you that you can learn from in order to get to that level up. And so you as a creator, especially if you're like teaching something, you don't have to be the foremost expert, depending on who you are teaching to, who you are trying to reach. Um, if you are in the cooking space, for example, like for me, a bartender is a mixology expert. For that bartender, it's probably like the world champion, you know, or whatever, right? Like for food, it might be a private chef. For the private chef, it might be Gordon Ramsay, right? Like, and so there are levels to these things. And as you get better and better, you can do things to build that trust.
I'm sorry, Taz, I'm hijacking the conversation, but I just also want to add because I completely agree. And for the audience as well, the beauty of something like Skillshare is Ali Abdul, who we also manage. He speaks about this, like the idea of the curse of knowledge. And when you are the physics PhD, you know so much that it might be difficult for you to actually dumb it down for Avi and for I. But when you know just a little bit more than the audience, i.e., you're Ali and you've been using Notion for a year, you can do a course on how to use Notion because you know that you remember what it felt like a year ago when you didn't know how to use it. So for those watching, I think the actionable point here is also that being an expert is very much within your grasp. You don't need to know that much more than your viewer. I think you just need to be clear with that. And like that's also how you build trust, by being transparent in that. But that can actually be a real sell, a real benefit. Like I suppose the point perhaps being trust doesn't just have to be 10,000 hours. It can just be a little bit more than what the audience has.
I love that because it makes it a lot more accessible, right? Because otherwise you think like, yeah, like I have to get some kind of like PhD or something like that to actually be considered an expert, but no, right? Um, Actually, I wanted to ask, it's a little bit of a switch, but Danny, I want to ask you like what early mistakes do you see creators making when they're going to monetize?
Um, I think perhaps contrary to what you might expect, someone like me saying is looking for management too soon. I think it's really good to like build that muscle on your own. If you blow up and you're huge and you don't want to, fine. Like you want to make sure you're doing it responsibly, fine. But if you're taking the path that most take and you're growing gradually, I often speak to creators early in their career and they seem to see getting management as like the goal, a goal in itself. And to expect that once I do that, then everything will open up and then I'll make lots of money. And I just don't think that's really one, it's not how it works. But two, I think it's desirable to build that muscle and to get some reps and to feel what it feels like to respond to brand inquiries, all that kind of stuff. Certainly do things right, have people in your corner so they can help advise you and you don't make silly mistakes. But I just think rushing to get management too soon is probably a mistake. Also, you need to be sensible about what those incentive structures are, and managers get paid on commission. If you're barely earning anything or your prospects aren't very much to earn much through like brand partnerships, then a talent manager who does sign you, like unless they're making a bet on you, they're not going to be getting paid much. So just being realistic about what that even means and what that looks like, I think. So I'd say, to answer your question, like looking for management too early, I think it's a distraction.
Makes sense. Taz, do you have any thoughts on that? Like mistakes that you see creators making?
I mean, I can't speak for all creators. I can speak for myself as a creator. So I was kind of the opposite of what you're saying because again, I was very naive growing up. I just liked making videos in my bedroom. So I actually didn't get management until way after I hit 1 million subscribers, because I was making videos in Cardiff and I wasn't around other creators. I wasn't around in London. And then I went to a YouTube convention and it was very eye-opening and I realized all the things that I was doing wrong. And the reason why I didn't get management wasn't, again, because I was strategic and smart about it. I was just scared of management because I heard so many horror stories. And I was like, look, I just really like making videos and I found this audience naturally. Why would I want to mess it up? Wasn't very business minded of me, but I think it saved me from getting potentially scammed. So I would say one mistake was probably like go with your gut instinct, but also what you said about like what you want from management. I didn't realize that till way later. I'd say quite recently, actually, because the way I got my first management was I went to a YouTube convention, and at this point I had like 1 million subscribers, and you get lots of people coming at you being like, we want to work with you and all that. And I was like, oh, this is scary. Okay, I don't know. And then what happened was the pandemic. I was getting so many emails and I couldn't handle it. So I literally went to management just to be like, can you just take this off my shoulders? I wasn't being like thinking about what my needs are, what I'm looking for, what the expectations are. I just kind of, it happened quite like naturally in that way. Now I am very more, I've got like more experience under my belt. I know what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what my expectations are. But I will say in this career, be kind to yourself. You're not gonna figure it all out in one go because this world is so, every creator's experience is so different that there's no way, it's not like a traditional job, right? It's kind of trial and error, and it's very much like you just gotta figure it out bit by bit. So I don't regret the way I did it because it led me to where I am now, and I'm in a much happier place. So I would say just take your time, go with your gut, and read your contracts. You know?
That's definitely a big one. Avi, do you have anything you want to add about mistakes?
Oh man. Sorry, I was so busy listening to Taz, I wasn't thinking about the answer to this. Read your contracts is like the biggest one. I think creators, especially on the artistic end of that spectrum, often assume good intentions, or they assume someone else is going to take care of it for them. And even if you have a manager, an agent, a lawyer, whatever it is, like you need to understand your business. Even if you're an artist, you have to understand your business because, you know, history is full of creators, you know, all the way back, like Elvis, notoriously his manager took 50% of his business and he didn't know any better. And you know, now the guy's now held up as like a example of like a, you know, being taken advantage of, right? You know, there are laws passed in Hollywood now because of these kinds of things, right? So read your contracts, understand your business, and like it's great to assume good intentions, but know that intentions aren't always good, and you need to protect yourself.
All right, that's really good advice. Okay, so we've got, in terms of monetization, we've got the kind of framework that you have, Avi. So like, and then there's the sort of like things that you shouldn't do. So you shouldn't get management too early. Maybe when you get management,
Oh, you know, let me add on to that, which is I always say you should never pursue management. You should only accept management. That is to say, like, if you're like, I need an agent, I need a manager, and you start calling them or emailing them or finding them at conventions or whatever, like, you might sign with someone, but they're not going to do anything for you because they know you need them more than they need you, right? It's kind of like, it's like a game a little bit. You want them to chase you. You want them to prove that they need you want them to prove that you need them, or at least that like they're going to deliver for you, because then now they're on the hook to actually do it once you sign with them. And if they don't, you have a good reason to say, hey, you're not delivering. I'm going to find someone else, because probably other people are reaching out to you as well. So handle it yourself until people are banging on your door, is my advice.
it sounds like Taz kind of waited till the right moment then, actually.
100%.
It's kind of crazy though. People think it's crazy that I didn't have management until after 1 million subscribers. So I'm not saying I am the person people should strive to be like. I think I waited way too long, but I also don't think I have regrets and stuff and not crazy horror stories. So I can sleep at night. So that's nice.
All right, maybe I will turn this to like one hot tip each of you have for like some of the things that you shouldn't do. Like, what's the one thing you should do if you do anything at all? If you're thinking about, in terms of if you're thinking about a creator and you're like, I would love to now go from creating something valuable that people are really engaging with to like, I'd like to make money from this.
I think figure out. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say to like kind of be open for business early. I think like obviously everyone falls differently on this spectrum, where some perhaps are too aggressive, trying to monetize too early. But I to be honest, I see more of the opposite, where there's all this time has gone into nurturing community and building audience, keeping it pure, and then there can be an undue nervousness to like turn the tap on and start commercializing, whether it's through brand partnerships or products or courses or premium content. And I think that's a shame. And I think again, it's less about expecting to earn loads of money early on. I just think it's about building the muscle and for that to become like an expected part of your brand. Because if you leave it for too long and you get more and more scared about it, and it becomes even more foreign to your subject matter and your content, then it's kind of increasing that barrier between you and being able to turn the monetization tap on. So I think it's a good idea to like turn the tap on, be open for business early on, whether that's offering paid services or products or doing partnerships, even if they're small deals, just so you're showing that I am a person who does brand partnerships. I think that's a good thing and a good muscle to exercise early on.
I think it's also understanding the space. Today's day and age of YouTube, it's so normal to do these things. So I don't think it would come down to your personal preference. If you yourself don't want to do those things, definitely don't force yourself and be a purist creator. No one is forcing you to do these things. But if you do them, it's so normalized that it's not going to be, I remember actually me feeling like this. Actually, there was this really big, significant deal coming my way. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I just feel like I don't know. And it took a lot of convincing for me to, which is wild to say, but it did take a lot of convincing. And then when I posted videos, everyone was so supportive. They're like, go get your coin, and they were so proud of me because they saw where I started. So they were on the journey. It wasn't like, oh, she's just doing this because they saw like 6 years of me doing nothing, So that's where the relationship is so important. That's why it's important to have that trust and all that, because a lot of times if you have built that community, they're going to want that for you. They want you to thrive. They want you to be successful. The tip I would say is, and this doesn't have to be like super conscious, but just be aware of the space that you're on and like coming across marketable if you want to do well. I think this can be quite subconscious when you put out content all the time. I think the way I put out content now to when I first started, it's different because you're just conditioned that way. You just become more aware of like what's marketable. You don't do it super consciously, but you kind of just know like what brands are looking for, what they're, and how you can put that into content naturally. I think just basically doing your research beforehand, and just knowing how to engage an audience. Are you a storyteller? Are you educational content? And once you have that, I think it'll come a lot more naturally than people think. A lot of it, if you have an email address, I'd say the most important thing is putting your email address so that they can contact you. Actually, that's the most important thing. Because if you do all the work and you don't do that, then there's literally no point. But once you put that in, it will come naturally. Don't overthink it, but just be aware of it,
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point of selling as early as possible or monetizing as early as possible, I think is a good one because it conditions your audience. Also, if you don't, you're leaving money on the table, right? Like someone who follows you from day one may not follow you day 100 or day 1000. And that's true for every fan. Like there is an average life cycle, right? A lifetime of a fan. And so that means that there is a lifetime value of a fan, and you want to maximize that lifetime value. Again, this panel is about making money. This is about going from 1,000 to 100,000 or more. And if you want to make money, you have to think about it like a business. It may feel weird to sell. It may feel weird to promote, whatever. But like, the only way to make money in the creator economy without selling and promoting is like YouTube AdSense. And even then, you've got to grow and grow and grow. So like, and the only way to make six figures that way is to be a multi-million scale creator, getting millions and millions of views per month. I think 10 million or more, something like that at this point. So, if you're there, I don't know why you're at this panel at all, because you're probably doing great. Like, go keep doing what you're doing. If you're not there, then you got to sell something, and you should start as early as possible. You probably will need to change over time. You'll learn what your audience needs. Really, selling is about understanding what your customers need and then giving that thing to them. right? That's what product is all about. That's what sales is all about. That's what marketing is all about. And so like I'll use myself as an example. For the first 6 months when I was like writing on LinkedIn, I started seeing like I keep getting messages from people saying, "Hey, how do I like I have a product, I want to get lots of creators. It's a SaaS product. I want to get, you know, lots of small creators to use it." Okay, well, that's like a specific service that's very different, like email outbound to creators, very different than like, oh, I want to get some big creators using my product and I have money to pay them as an advance or whatever. That's a whole different business model. So I could do this one. I can't do this one. And so I went and found a company that could do this one. I worked out a referral deal and then I started sending these people to them and getting 25% of that, right? And like I've made, I don't know, like 50 grand over the last year sending these businesses that way, right? And like they help me now grow my newsletter and they help do all these other things, right? It's Company Influencers Club. And so like by hearing what my audience wanted, seeing it in the comments, seeing it in my DMs, posting about those topics and getting that positive feedback, I could then figure out, well, what should I sell them? Maybe it's not my own product. Maybe it's just referring to someone else's product because they do it better than I do. You can be creative like that. You don't have to do everything, but you have to think about it.
Okay, I love all of this. This is like, honestly, I'm finding this is like a gold mine of information. I hope everyone in the audience feels the same. It's wonderful listening to you guys. So we've got one more sort of like little section before we get into the we've got some frameworks from Danny and Avi that are really, really cool. I know we're running a little bit, just like looking at the time, I can tell this is going to go over a little bit. Hopefully everyone just checking with our panels. Is that okay for like 10 minutes over time?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to ask one quick question here, and it's about, okay, like the growth trajectory. So at some point as a creator, you have to invest in yourself, probably start spending some of your own money. And the question is, when do you start doing that? When do you feel confident enough to make that investment? In this case, maybe I'll start with Taz.
I think it's one of those things that you don't wait, it'll just happen and you'll just have to do it. Like, for example, buying new equipment and stuff like that. You don't wait for that. You just realize very quickly, oh, I need to do this to catch up with it. And like, also, if you've got a lot of, if you start getting busy with other opportunities, you outsource the work to other people. It's not, from my experience, usually creators don't wait. It's a case of like, I'm getting overwhelmed and you have to because everyone's experience again is very different, but if you are growing exponentially, it'll just naturally you'll realize, oh, I need to get an accountant, oh, I need to do you just these things come up, and obviously you're an entrepreneur and you're learning this in real time, and you realize, oh, this is what you need to do when you're an entrepreneur, this is what you need to do when you got to create your own business, and that comes with a lot of expenses. So actually it all happened very much in real time. I was like, yes, whatever needs to be done, take my money. I just don't want to do my taxes. I do not want to commit fraud. Oh, and buy equipment. And then maybe if you are, if your content is editing heavy and you're trying to put out content very quickly, one person cannot do it all the time. So you outsource and get that. But I think again, I can't speak for all creators, but usually these things aren't something that you like set a timeline, like in a 1 year, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They very much happen because this job is very like, it changes so quickly, right? One video can go viral and change your life overnight. So in my experience, you'll know, it'll happen and you'll realize.
I love that. That makes so much sense. I'm going to put Avi on the spot next because I feel like you have in some of our prep calls, I feel like you might have a slightly different perspective on the investment question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on which side of the spectrum that you're on, right? Like artist versus entrepreneur, right? Platforms have different business models for this reason, right? So like, there are platforms like Patreon where for membership, they take 10%. That's because their target audience is artists. Artists are like uncertain about the business potential. And so they don't want to put money down up front. And so it's lower risk. On the upside, like on the high end, you pay a lot more, but fine. Most of those people are fine doing that. On the flip side, there's other membership platforms where you pay a flat fee per month, and it might be high, it might be $100, $200, $300. It's a couple $1,000 a year. It's a real investment. Those are entrepreneurs. Those are people who are betting they're going to make enough money that 10% is going to be way more than $3,000 a year. Right? If you're making 200 grand a year, 10% is 20 grand a year. I'd much rather pay $100 a month or $200 a month than 10%. And so, I think it depends on your mindset. If you like, when I started doing this, right, I skew a little bit more on the entrepreneurial side. I was like, I got bills to pay, man. I have a kid. I've got a mortgage. Like, I'm married. Like, I'm not here to like do this for fun. I'm here to make a living. And so I see it as an investment. Now, I have made investments, like tens of thousands of dollars of investments that didn't pan out, right? Like I bailed on my video business after 6 months because it wasn't working, and I had paid 20 grand to an editor to like do that work for me. Well, that's gone. But again, I see that as an investment, and in business, like some investments pan out and some don't. I've made other investments that worked out really well. So it depends on your mindset and your risk tolerance. And how serious you are about it. Because if you're serious about it, then making the investment is just going to make you more driven to be successful.
All right, Danny, do you want to wrap us up on this point before we move to the next section?
Sure. I don't want to add points for the sake of it because I think the guys kind of covered it. But I guess one like hidden benefit to investing earlier, and I would say in general, it's a very personal decision, but in general, I would probably suggest people invest slightly earlier than they might otherwise expect to. A hidden benefit is that having a little bit more skin in the game tends to be a good thing. Like having put something down is likely to make you take it a little bit more seriously. That's on average. So like obviously everyone's different, but that's the only thing I'll add to what the others said. I think it's a good idea, and it sets you up for a more sustainable career from this thing as well, if you've invested in other people and support.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was all really, really wonderful. Okay, so the next little section here, and we might have to go a little bit faster through this than intended, but we've got some great frameworks. And so, Avi, we've got your framework. It's the Creator Monetization Framework. And Danny, you've got the Shopfront framework, which I love. So maybe we'll start with Avi and then move to Danny.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit long to go through in detail on a panel, but generally speaking, this kind of goes back to the whole trust, quality, reach, with a few tweaks here, right? Depending on how broad your audience is or deep it is, right? Like, is your audience a large cross section of the population, or is it a very specific group of people with very specific interests? Depending on your reach, do you have a lot of audience or a smaller audience? And depending on your content, is your content broad, i.e., like, is it more general, like it's vlog type content, it's your life, or about you write or you make videos about a lot of different things, versus like very specific, you only make videos about making coffee drinks, or you only write about how to make deals in the creator economy. Different types of monetization, different tactics will work. So I'll just give like a couple of examples. If you have a deep audience, deep content, but low reach, then you're probably creating niche content for a small but passionate audience with very specific interests in that niche content. So you're probably an expert or a respected voice in that space. And so, you may want to monetize through leveraging that expertise, right? And leveraging the interest in that specific topic. Now, different topics have different values. If you're like a deeply respected, I don't know, anime analyst, for better or worse in the market, that's like less valuable than being a deeply respected finance person, right? Because like there's lots of money in finance. And so if you're on the finance side, maybe you could become a coach or sell a course on personal finance, or maybe you're a business finance person and you can consult for companies as a fractional CFO. And you could charge a lot of money for that. Whereas like if it's a lower value sort of niche, then maybe it's more about monetizing that community, building a community, getting really niche brands, like if in the anime example, like going to Crunchyroll and trying to get them to sponsor you, or going to whatever it is, right? And so thinking about how to monetize specifically the breadth or depth of your content, the scale of your reach, and then how sort of narrow your audience is versus wide it is, are critical in actually figuring out what the right business model for you and your business is. Because if you get it wrong, like if you have a deep audience, deep content, but low reach, and you're trying to sell, I don't know, $5 Patreon memberships, like that's just not really going to make you much money. Sorry, right? You want to make six figures, like the math on that, you need like thousands of people to subscribe. It's unlikely. But like Jay Klaus is a great example of this. Deep audience, deep content, relatively low reach, like he's sub 100K, I think 50K, whatever. He makes like 700 grand a year because he's got 300 people paying him $2,500 from a very high value membership. So that's the framework. There's more on that on my newsletter on the website creatorlogic.com.
Right.
I'll put a link in the chat for the framework.
Love this framework. It's worth like reading it out and like really deeply kind of like ingesting it. All right, Danny, on to you.
Yeah, I wanted to come at it from a different angle. Obviously, we're managers, so we're helping creators monetize, and it's often to the external world of brand partners. And what we find is that creators don't realize they have two brands. Usually realize you have one brand. One's really obvious, but one is hidden and one's less obvious. And that second one is actually really where you can like what you can control and where you can leverage how much or influence how much money you make. So if we go to the next slide, I don't know if you guys remember watching, do you remember those like memes a few years ago, like Instagram versus LinkedIn versus Facebook versus Tinder, I think it was, and there's all those like 4 different photos. I was going to put one of them, but I thought every deck really needs to have like a Michael Scott or The Office reference. So I just thought I'd use these. So you have like your Instagram brand and your LinkedIn brand. If we go to the next slide, really what I mean here is like your B2C brand, your consumer facing brand, and your B2B brand. When we say, we can bounce to the next slide. I know we haven't got too long. When we say B2B, really, I'm talking about the business facing brand. So the businesses we're talking about here are the buyers, the brands and the agencies who are going to pay you to do brand deals. The consumer facing brand is the one that creators tend to think about more often from day zero, is how am I going to build audience? How am I going to build community? So that's the one that you guys usually have down. It's the B2B brand that I want to talk about today. And I like these. I like when panels and stuff like that are really, really actionable. So I wanted to like to give something that's really useful. So we're going to focus on that B2B brand in this little mini session. And so I want to talk about fixing your shop window. Going back to what Avi said earlier, he had this really good framework with like trust, quality, and reach. And we were talking about how you can like different ones that are easier or harder to control. And that quality one, I think I would say is probably within your circle of control the most out of those. And so what I want to talk about today is something you can do literally. It could take 5 minutes or take a day for you to improve at least the perceived quality of your products. And when I'm talking about products, I'm talking in that B2B business facing world. And so in that case, your product is yourself as an advertising partner. So your shop window is just that. So if we go to the next slide, when I first started managing creators, and I would be going to coffee meetings and speaking to advertisers, to brands about trying to sell our creators as brand partners, I would have media kits, and maybe I'd have my laptop and I'd try and pull it out in the coffee shop and show them. But most often, really, we use Instagram. I would be like, oh, here's Jack, or here's Angela, here's Tash, and I would be showing them, basically selling these different brand partners to them there and then using Instagram. And it was really interesting for me. This is pre-COVID, so we actually used to meet people in person, and I would be able to see their reaction in real time. I would show them my phone. They would see the Instagram profile, and I would see their reaction immediately. And you can see whether they're interested or not. And what we realize is that the immediate view of your Instagram as a creator is really like your shop window. It's kind of like your resume. And so I just want to share a few tips that are super actionable, so you can be thinking about your resume, your shop window from a B2B perspective. Every creator will fuss over their Instagram feed from like an aesthetics perspective, a view that, to be honest, no one really cares about. Even your consumers don't really consume your Instagram as like this. They consume it in the feed. But by thinking deliberately about your B2B brand, you can really influence this. So here on the left, you can see Jack Edwards. You can use your content to show your goals. So for example, Jack really likes presenting and wants to do more of that. So you can see where he's holding the mini mic. You can see that top right piece of content is basically him presenting. You can also use it to like flex and to win off the power of affiliation. And so you can see there he's interviewing Stephen Fry. But just like the very power of association is really strong when it comes to brand partnerships. And the types of people who pay you for these brand partnerships will be really impressed by something like that. So without having more audience, without necessarily having done the hard work of building more trust or reach, you're able to show increase your value through this like affiliation. Another one is like specialized or differentiating skills. So Natasha in the middle, she's a very skilled graphic designer. And so you can see in her top 6 in her shop window, she's included lots of content that it like flexes her design skills. And this is again a really attractive thing for a brand partner. Other thing in this is some of these posts have gone like insanely viral. So it's quite a smart idea to make sure some of your viral posts are pinned here, because when a brand is very quickly checking to get a vibe on your engagement, and if they see a viral post pinned, that's going to impress them. And finally, on the right here, you can see Angela. Back to the shop window idea, you want to show the brand or the potential advertiser what it looks like to have a brand or a product in your content. So you can see here, there's like plenty of product placement. There's a L'Oreal logo you can kind of see on her 4th post there. So you can see brands, you can see products inserted in her content. And if I'm a brand and I'm looking at this, I can immediately see myself. And so if Angela is offering me a product herself as an advertising partner, I can see myself in that product, and it's going to make Angela as a potential partner way more attractive to me. So that's it. I wanted to share that because I feel like that's something that everyone can influence straight away. You don't have to like build a YouTube channel. You can change what your shop window looks like right after this call if you want.
Like, that is definitely so actionable and so insightful. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we have moved on to the audience question portion of this. Thank you both for also being really quick so we could get to this. All right, I'm going to start with a question about success. So I often hear that we only hear success stories. We don't often hear of those gambling and losing. I want to take the risk, invest time and money into creating content. But what separates those who are successful from those who aren't? Is it luck? Is it hard work? I know that's a heavy question. It's got lots of answers. Maybe in this case, we will start with Taz if you want to dig in. If you don't, then
yeah. This one is quite a hard one to put into a short time, but I actually had this specific thing in my life of like, is it worth taking a risk because it's such a risk? So when I first started doing YouTube, so I studied law, and that was like my safe option. That's a thing you do for stability, for money, all that sort of stuff. But I like making videos, and that's the passion, and that's the dream. But it didn't feel like you said, it feels like such a risk. And at the time when I was doing it, I had just graduated from a law degree, very prestigious, very like society views that in a certain way. And here I am like, I want to make silly, happy videos on the internet. It ended up being sad poetry videos, but we digress. And it was a huge risk. And the reality is it's not going to be fun. And a lot of that is documented online so people can see my growth. There's a lot of videos from my early days where I am sad, I'm questioning. I literally was on stage at one point saying like, I feel like a failure and I don't know what I'm doing in my life, but I just want to just give myself the chance. And it just sucks that we live in a society where we're not really given the opportunity to learn about ourselves, and we're just thrusted straight into, you got to have all these life goals, you got to have stability, and then you hit your midlife crisis and you're like, who am I as a person? a lot of it, I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning, you gotta believe in yourself. Even when there's no proof whatsoever. I did not come from a creative background. I was not a confident person. I wasn't a great speaker. But for some reason, I was very delusional. And I just found something that I was really passionate about. And when you're passionate about it, it makes it so much easier to go for a goal. If you're not passionate about it, you're not gonna have that thing to keep you going. I'm not gonna lie to you, people can see it now and it looks so lovely and great. There were many years where you were crying, you were like pushing yourself through because no one else is going to believe in you. You got to be the one to do it first. Afterwards, it's all nice and lovely, but the first few years are really tough. So the reality is, you just got to keep going. And there are going to be times when you feel like you're not going to get success for years. And it's probably like you just gotta keep going. I wish there was like this formula and there was this nice thing. Obviously, you can do the tips and tricks and stuff, but a lot of it is mental. You just have to keep going. And I think if you have a bigger, like so they say like if your life is quite comfortable, you're not going to be willing to take the risk because you have like this cushion. I think sometimes what I've learned from people is if you have a much more like what do you call it? Like I really didn't want to do what I was doing, so it made me push for it more. If you like what you're doing but you would like to make video because it's fun, maybe the scale isn't, so there's so many factors, but a lot of it is you have to have a lot of delusional self-belief, and that is so much harder said than done. But I think the ones who have that end up doing quite well, from what I've spoken to creators and all that. We're all very delusional bunch.
Can I add on to that? I think that so I wrote about this a little bit when I stopped doing video. It's like the biggest piece of advice you hear for video, right? Like you got to keep going. YouTube, TikTok, like just keep doing it. Get started and keep doing it. Keep doing it. The reality is there's lots of people that keep doing it for years and years and years. It doesn't go anywhere. It is absolutely a mix of luck and hard work. That's the case for anything, right? You're an attorney. Are you going to be an attorney that, grinds for the next 40 years? Are you going to become a partner at a law firm and, then by the time you're 50, you got a bunch of juniors doing all your work and you're just sitting pretty. Like that's partly hard work, partly luck. Did you get the right client? Was it you assigned to this client that becomes the biggest client of the company, or was it one of your peers? That's luck, right? I mean, there's a concept called luck surface area, which is like doing things that expand the possibility of you getting lucky. So hard work expands your luck surface area. If you are the hardest, if you're known for coming in, I'm using a job as an example because like it's the same thing in a way. Like, when I was at WME, I started in the mailroom and I became an assistant and I became an agent. Like this is the way it happens in Hollywood, right? From Yale to the mailroom. My parents were thrilled. I got promoted to agent quickly, in part because of my luck surface area, unknowingly and unknowingly. The things I did knowingly, I was the first person in the office. I was the last person out of it. I got there at 7 a.m. every day, no matter how hungover I was. I left at like 11 p.m. every night. That I had to do because there was a lot of work to be done. But I was the guy known for being there first, being there last. The things that I did unknowingly, I happened to be interested in digital media and ended up working for someone who got promoted, who was in digital media, got promoted to be head of digital, and that helped me get promoted, right? Now, had I worked for a different boss, I would have been an assistant for years. Most people are. My luck surface area expanded because of my interests, my following my passions, my happening to be interested in something that is the obvious, I thought at the time, future of the industry. And because I worked my ass off. And so there are things you can do to help yourself get lucky, but ultimately luck is still luck, right? If my boss hadn't been promoted, if the other guy that was in digital had stayed the head of digital and my boss had just continued to do what she was doing, I would have been an assistant forever. I probably never gotten promoted. Who knows where I'd be right now, right? And so I think it's very much the same with YouTube. You cannot predict the algorithm. You cannot do it. Even Mr. Beast cannot predict the algorithm. It's like religion at this point, right? Like the people that make these algorithms don't know how they work anymore. We are living in the age of digital gods, and algorithms and trying to predict them are a new form of religion. You are welcome to try to read the tea leaves, right? To cast the animal bones, to, pray to the weather gods, and, hope that whatever video you make and the data you're analyzing and this and that is going to make your video perform better. The reality is, it is being consistent. It is trying to make the best stuff you can make, trying to understand what your audience wants and giving it to them. And then it's just fucking luck, man. That's it. So that's my take.
Mm. I love so many the takeaways, like delusional self-belief, luck surface area, age of digital gods. Really good. Danny, do you want to? Oh, sorry, Taz.
Absolutely not. I'm not following those two. They were great answers.
It's pretty
I like
amazing.
that Abby's one was actionable too, because when you hear luck and delusional self-belief, that feels very woo-woo, right? It's like, yes, you need that, but that's one part of the stake. Also come across marketable, and we've got so much evidence of what works well on YouTube now. Once you go into a niche, what the brand's like, what the audience like you have that information now. So it's like, yes, you've got to be delusional. That's one aspect. You got to come across marketable in your niche, and then you just got to show up. And you just have to be consistent. So that's actually, it's not just, oh, just believe in the dream. It's also very real stuff. And it's a whole thing of like, create your own luck. Like, I believe you create your own luck. I was making videos for 2 years, no views, but then one video popped up because I had 2 years worth of content. They stayed because they saw my growth throughout the years. If you just have one viral video at the beginning, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a community, because they have nothing else to stay for. You got to make them stay. Getting the views quick, you can do a lot easy. Making them stay, that's where the grind comes in, right? When my video went viral, I had 2 years worth of content for them to be like, okay, I'm going to stick around to see what she does. But if I didn't do that for 2 years, because I'd be like, oh, well, no one's watching for 2 years, I wouldn't have got that viral video, which was the luck. I am proof of the luck. So I know that's silly because you can't predict luck, but I also did my time before that. So it's
Well,
all of these things, not just
you
one.
you need the delusional self-belief to create luck surface area, right? Because if you didn't have delusional self-belief, you'd have made like 5 videos and been like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm gonna go become a lawyer. Like, I needed delusional self-belief to become a talent agent because I graduated from Yale, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the mailroom and I'm gonna be someone's assistant while my friends are in finance making, 150 grand a year back in 2010, which, was a lot of money back then. And so, like, you have to have delusional self-belief in order to create luck surface area, because delusional self-belief leads you to do really hard things over an extended period of time. And doing very hard things over an extended period of time enables luck to happen. Again, it is luck. It will not happen to everyone. But that's where the delusion comes in.
I feel like this is a new framework.
You
Surface
put them all
area.
together. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we are over time already, and so I'm not going to go into a next question. Apologies to the audience, but I feel like the answer to that question was just fantastic, and so we're going to end on this note. Before going any further, I want to say thank you so much to all three of you. This has been by far the highlight of my week. Just getting a chance to spend time with three such great thinkers. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Can we plug stuff?
Oh,
I just want to plug my newsletter, Creator Logic, creatorlogic.com/subscribe. I interview creators about how they run their businesses. I write thought pieces about how to make money as a creator. Subscribe. And then if you want to ask any of these follow-up questions, feel free to email me and I will do the best I can to give you a good answer. Or I'll write a post on LinkedIn about it, where you can also follow me, Avi Gandhi, on LinkedIn.
okay. I heard that it's pledge, not plug. That's why I made a weird face. Definitely great plug. And for anyone who's not subscribed to your newsletter in the creator economy, that's you got to subscribe. It's really thought-provoking. And if anyone hasn't watched Taz's stuff, I started and then I couldn't stop. So the only risk is that you will just continue. Danny, did you want to close out with anything, or Taz? Sorry.
Absolutely not. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, great.
I learned a lot. As a creator, I have learned a lot. So very insightful. Thank you.
This is fun.
So fun.
I'm like taking notes about things to write about on LinkedIn now. That's what I'm doing. I'm like delusional self-belief. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that becoming like another post. I was like,
Yeah, I'll tag you, Taz. This is a great line. I love that line.
yeah. I feel like all three of you should do some kind of collab.
I'm in.
Danny, make it happen.
Yeah, I'll just broker the deal.
Next project. All right, so we've got this to close out. I'll be really quick about these little bits here. So if you want to keep growing and learning with Skillshare, if you use that QR code, you can go to Skillshare, you can use Dream Job, we can get 1 month free. Definitely worth doing. If you want to keep the conversation going, we also have a Discord. We're just spinning up a nascent kind of like Skillshare community. It's a lot of fun in there. You can join our Discord. There's some kind of questions that I think I know there's 3 Dannys and this is a little strange. There's another Danny H from Skillshare. He can post that in the chat if you want to see the interactive questions that you can kind of move over to the Discord. And also, we've got some additional Dream Job Week sessions happening later in the week. Head to Eventbrite for all the details and register and look out for a digital goodie bag. If you didn't register for this one, you won't get the digital goodie bag unless you register for another session. But you can register for any session and get your digital goodie bag. It's good, I promise. All right. Thanks again, everyone.